Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Brian Gottlieb. Hi, Brian.
Great to see you. Thanks for having me. And what a great podcast this is going to be, because what you do and your belief system is so important for every organization. So I look forward to really getting into it.
Thank you. And likewise, I'm very excited to have you on this podcast. And I'm going to read your bio. So you are a best-selling author, an inspirational business leader, who in 2009, you founded Sunderland Home Improvements on a plastic folding table with $3,000. 2009, yes. Okay?
Correct.
Do you still have that plastic folding table?
Well, what is really funny about that is as we started opening up new products and markets, every product and market opened on a plastic folding table because they had to earn the right to have a desk. They had to get profitable. They had to be successful. Then we could celebrate when the desk came in. It was like a big deal. So I think it really helps with that entrepreneurial culture, that whole plastic folding table mentality.
Right. And then if you have the plastic folding table inside a garage, it's even more, iconic,
That's right?
Because
That's
you
right.
have that. Okay.
That's
but
right.
12 years later, when you sold the family of businesses you created and diversified products, expanded in multiple states, grown to 600 employees and nearly $1 billion in cumulative sales.
Yeah. It's
That's
wild
very,
ride.
very impressive. And, your leadership principles are very simple. Have a well-defined strategy, empower your teams, provide world-class training, and execute with consistency.
That's right.
And that is spot on. I mean, that's what we believe in. That's why we serve our clients in terms of the consistency, so I totally agree. And you believe that if you want to build a business, you must commit to building people. Amen. That's so important because they are the backbone of your business. And that absolutely need to happen.
Yeah, and what's so interesting is, look, I think every business leader has the desire to empower their team, right? That's the desire. But it's also quite common that the business leader, when they start a business, when it's trying to grow a business, they want to hold on to everything because we're all in. We're all in on things. When we start a business, it's like our whole future is in our business. So we tend to want to hold on to things. And it's very difficult to empower people if people don't know where to get that information from, if they don't have systems, if they don't have processes, if they don't have training to accompany all that. The natural default, it then turns into micromanagement. And that's not healthy for anyone. And then you end up with an organization that's nothing more than chaos. And we know one thing about chaos. Chaos can produce revenue. There was a time in our business where we would sell a bunch of stuff, but we didn't make any money. Chaos produces revenue, but discipline produces profit. And discipline comes from documentation.
Absolutely. All right, but I'm sure our listeners are curious, like what was before 2009? So 2009 is the folding table and $3,000. What happened before 2009?
Yeah, I was very fortunate. I grew up sitting at the kitchen table selling things. And my first in-home sales job was when I was in high school selling pots and pans door to door. So I really love going into a customer's home.
Like Zig Ziglar.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was great. I sold waterless cookware. I could cook anything with 3 drops of water. It was a great demo back then. But anyway, so I transitioned into home improvements and sales management, eventually started a consulting company. And what was really fun is that I kept a journal, and in that journal, I would visit companies all across the country. And in my journal, I would have one page where if I ever open up a business, I'm definitely doing this. And another page, if I ever open up a business, I'm never doing that. So I really got to sort of like my PhD in home improvements by really seeing the strengths and challenges inside of other organizations. It made my
Wow.
journey a little easier.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so you were selling, and then the rest of it, like, how did we get to that, to the opening the business?
Yeah, well, the challenge with being a consultant is that, at least back then, pre-Zoom, you're living in hotels and you're on the road all the time. And I miss my kids, I miss my wife, I miss my family, and it's really hard when you come home and just to change suitcases and you're going back out again. So I wanted to do something that got me off of the road, and that's when I decided I'm in Appleton, Wisconsin. I'm going to start my own business. Did I ever expect it to be what it turned into? That was never the plan. But I think I really want to go there for a second because this is so
Yeah.
important. There are so many business owners. It's not like they took time and went to college to come up with this master business plan to get into home improvements. What typically happens is they work somewhere and they didn't like their job, so they decided to do it on their own. Then they start gaining a little bit of traction, and before you know it, they got a company. We have a company. Oh my gosh, now what do we do? And that's where I think it's we have to normalize the idea that a lot of times we don't know what we're doing. When my company was $20 million, I never ran a $20 million company before, or a $40 million or a $100 million company. And again, along that way, this is why podcasts like this is so important, because you kind of can get an insight on what are some things I should watch out for and what are some things I really need to do to make my business grow and to help
Well,
the
let's
people
talk
inside
about
the
that.
business
I
grow.
love that. That's a great segue to that. So what
Yeah.
are some of the things? I, I'm curious about that list that you said. What are you going to do and what you're not going to do? And did that actually
Yeah.
come true? I mean, when you actually ran the
Yeah.
20 million
Yeah.
and 40 million, did you go back to that list and say, oh, yeah, I was right?
So one of the early disciplines in the business, when I in 2008, I saw a lot of companies that were really got over their ski tips financially, and especially when the phone stopped ringing, and they were overextended on marketing dollars and all these sorts of things. And when they couldn't market, they really started to get in trouble because they couldn't generate leads. And then, next thing you know, a lot of companies went out of business. Early on, one of the first things I did when I set up my bank account, right, I set up a second account, and every single check that I got in, whether the check was for $10 or $100 or $1,000, I took 7% of that money and stuck it in a separate account. That was my marketing budget. This way I would always have cash to generate leads. Now, as the business grew, that 7% turned into a much bigger percentage of sales, but nonetheless, it was still a discipline of the business that if you can't generate a lead, you're not going to have a business very long. So you do have to be great at generating leads, processing the leads, which kind of brings me to a point, by the way. When you think about documentation in general, and I know that's right in your wheelhouse, and you can help so many companies with that, because when I speak at conferences, I ask people, how many of you need to do a better job documenting your processes? And all the hands go up. They really do. And
Right.
I think what happens is I think companies get stuck on where to start, right? And
Right.
and my belief is, before you start with your system and process, you first start with what are the disciplines of your business. As an example, one of our business disciplines is the lead is sacred. Okay, the lead is sacred. Once we understand that that's a discipline, then we start asking ourselves questions like, okay, if it's sacred, how should we treat it? How quickly should we respond to it when it comes into our email box, right? What should that script look like? And then we can start coming up with the processes we need to honor the discipline of the lead is sacred. Another one was, okay, when we're done with the job, we get paid in full at that moment. That's a discipline. What does our system and process need to look like in order to deliver to that discipline? And then what does our training look like so that we can teach others to do it? So it's just
Right.
kind of
I
interesting.
think it's brilliant, because that's exactly right, because it is, you identify what is important, and then the process documentation actually gets the how. Like, how am I going to do that? But you also hold on to the understanding of what you're trying to accomplish, and you don't just follow instructions for the sake of following instructions. So I think it's very spot on.
Yeah, and I think even when you're teaching, look, in my book Beyond the Hammer, one of the pillars of leadership is that leaders model their business as a training organization. And look, you have to train and develop your team if you have any hopes of empowering people. And
Right.
And to do so, it's one thing to train the process, but I think it's also helpful to teach the why the process existed. Because usually it's to solve some problem inside of the business. That's when we create a process around it, because something was broken, so we need a system and a process, or there's friction inside of the organization, so we need a system and process to relieve that friction. If we teach the why, the what sticks a whole lot better, is what I found.
I agree. I agree. You know, I find that many processes, yes, are a solution to something that was broken. I mean, of course, you have the core processes that it's basically how the organization runs. I mean, you know, it's very similar to having a body that, you know, you have the different processes that functioning well, you have to understand how that functions, but then, oh, and now you're going to take that supplement, or you're not going to eat this,
Yeah.
or you're going to be gluten-free, or you're going to be this, or you're going to be that, because there was a problem and you're trying to solve it. So you're doing that process to do that. So that is very spot on. So if from your experience, like, let's talk about your company, like when it was growing, did you see
Yeah.
differences of the need of different processes at different stages of the business?
Oh, yeah. And what was really interesting is that by the time we plugged in a system, we already outgrew it, right? So we're constantly, and I think one of the things, and this is a really important point. If we think about business in general, as you're growing a business, you put in systems and processes, and before you know it, you actually have to inspect it to see if those systems and processes still should be in your business. Because simplicity scales. Complexity really drains a business's energy. Complexity is the enemy of execution. And simplicity is hard. It's really, really difficult to remove complexity. It's super easy to make a business complicated. So as the leader of the business, we always have to look at, is this the most efficient way to get from the time we generate a lead to the time that we're done and paid with a project, and all those things in between? Or are we doing things that we really shouldn't be doing anymore? So I think that also is equally important.
I think so too. I think it's very important. Okay, so let's go back to that list of the do's and don'ts. So what are some of the, let's start with the don'ts. What are some of the don'ts you say I'm never going to do in my business?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, make sure you have money for marketing. Okay. Another thing that I see over and over again, and not just back then, but I even see it today, that
So I guess the don'ts, this the do is like have money for marketing. So the don't is never get stuck without money for marketing.
Right. So make sure you have money to market, right? And make sure and look, even when it comes to marketing, not every source is going to work. Okay. You got to try different marketing sources. It's okay to be wrong. Just don't be wrong for long. You've got to get off of bad ideas. So you have to measure everything, and you have to make sure that you really have to watch your numbers. But where I see companies getting it wrong, and I'll tell you what to do about it, is that a lot of organizations, people don't have clear KPIs, key performance indicators. The thing about the home improvement business that makes it very, very special and really cool is that just about every person in the organization can have a daily KPI. And when you have daily KPIs, the people on your team, first of all, they deserve to know how their performance is being measured. They deserve to know that. But also their compensation should also be tied to it. You see, I see a lot of companies that they pay these big salaries with no real incentive around performance. And that's difficult. That's very difficult. You have such an opportunity to come up with what are the key KPIs per role, and then create great compensation structures around it to keep as many of your costs variable as possible, while at the same time giving your team tremendous upside if they're top performers. And I think that's a fundamental of a business. For those that have grown healthy businesses, they get that right.
I agree with you 100%. That's one of the conversations I actually had with somebody I'm hiring for a VP in my organization, and they wanted a very high base salary. I said, you know what? I've been burned so many times, because I learned from experience as well. No more, it's I think Donald Miller is the one who says, don't hire rock stars, make rock stars. So if you're very confident in your ability to produce, then you will take a base salary. And the way I structured the performance, you can always do more than what you have gotten if you had a base salary. Like, let's say you ask me a base salary of X, I would go, okay, we're going to probably give you 1/5 of it in base salary. But if you actually perform what you are saying that you can perform, and it's realistic, not something out of like, okay, I'm hiring you so we can expand, not stay the same. So if we can expand, then you're going to make maybe 2 times the X that you asked for, but it's going to be, and I'm allowing you to basically have ownership and run your own business, because that's also in the trades. You can have people that in their own respective departments are going to run their own businesses.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant. And that's absolutely was one of our secrets, that we treated every department as its own little business inside of a business. And you teach people how to run a business. Essentially, when we think about other disciplines in the business, look, I'm sure that, again, we can go into any conference together and we can ask people to raise their hand. Is there a key hire that you really want to bring on into your company, but you're afraid to take on the overhead right now? And all the hands will go up. It happens all the time. But that's a symptom of a much bigger problem. You see, at the core of the issue is that companies need to be excellent at not only forecasting, but also hitting forecasted targets, right? Because the more confident you are at hitting forecasted targets, the more willingness you have to invest in the business, right? So people that are afraid to take on a hire, it's really that they're not confident in their targets. The only way you hit targets isn't by yourself. You have to enlist the talents of your team. These individual businesses, the marketing team is its own business. The sales team is its own business. We have to teach them how to forecast. I'll tell you a story. When I first started forecasting, this is a little embarrassing, okay? Back in the early days, it was probably, we were probably doing, $10 million a year. And I had this idea, we ought to try to forecast to see what we could do with our business. We were so bad at forecasting. We were so bad at hitting targets. I almost stopped doing it. I'm like, we're so bad at it. Let's just stop doing it altogether, which is silly. But no, but over time, look, it's messy, it's ugly in the beginning, but over time, you get better and better and better at it. And when you teach other people how to do it, and they're like, they have their own little hamburger stands and they're closing out their cash register at the end of every day, get them to forecast their business, hit their targets, and report up, the upward reporting. It's a very empowering process. And when you're excellent at it, that's when it gets really fun, because now you can just throw more cash at it and all those sorts of things to really scale. It's a whole lot of fun.
I agree. And when you forecast, and that's where you have to, when you hire the new hire, that you have to show how that new hire is actually going to align with achieving the forecast. So you also have to have the tactical part of your strategy. It's not enough to just forecast, but how am I going to get there? So if I'm hiring the next, to your point, the next strategic hire should be maybe a marketing if you don't have that many leads. So you hire the marketing and you really augment your marketing team and go for it. And then you obviously have to forecast that at some point you're going to have to hire also people to deliver.
100%. And that's kind of how this business is, right? I mean, I used to have this thing that I would do with my team. I would put my hands like this and I would bend my fingers backwards, because they all knew that my goal was to bend the different departments of the business when I'm trying to scale quickly. I don't want to break it, but I want to bend them. I want to say, okay, I have too many leads. Okay, so that puts pressure on the sales team. Well, we don't have enough salespeople. We better get more salespeople. Oh my gosh, we got too many sales. We got to get more production people. And oh, now we have so many production people. Guess what? We need more leads. And constantly bending the business to find, to almost like to break it to fix it, to break it to fix it, because that's how you grow a business. It's not like you can just grow the whole thing all at once. You've got to put pressure and a little bit of friction on the different departments, and then relieve that friction. You'll uncover a new problem that you got to fix. And that's what a lot of business, that's what building a business is all about.
Yes, it's definitely. And you experienced that rapid growth. So how, probably our listeners are curious. I mean, I'm curious, like, what is the feeling? Like, what goes around when it's just like, 20 to 40, like really fast? I mean, how do you manage that, and how do you manage it, also the expectations with the people that work with you?
Yeah. Well, one thing that was really helpful is in the early days of business, we started our own mastermind group, and it originally was called the Dirty Dozen, and today it still exists, and it's called the Big 12. And it was a bunch of our friends. We were all in similar industries, and we checked our ego at the door, and we would get together on a regular basis, and we would talk about the challenges in our business. And what's so interesting is, at the time, the original Dirty Dozen, the original Big 12, combined, we were doing maybe $100 million in revenue. Those 12 companies today are doing $3 billion in revenue combined. So,
wow.
but that whole process of really understanding that you're going to learn, you're going to stub your toe along the way. But if you have sometimes we can be in our own little bubble inside of our business, and we really have to get out of our bubble. And we have to meet with like-minded business leaders that are all trying to do the same things so we can all grow together. I will also share with you that what really helped me, because as the business is growing, my role would change, right? My role changed. What is my responsibility as the leader of the organization? And it all came down to this epiphany that I had. And we were probably doing, I don't know, at the time, maybe $30 million a year. And my epiphany was, I realized that, for the business to reach its potential, for it to grow, the people inside of the business have to first reach theirs. So in other words, the lid of the business was directly connected to the lid of the team. And my realization was, that's my role. My role is to help people not just realize that potential, but actually reach it. And that's my role as the leader of the business, because if I want to grow the business, I have to first grow the people. It's, again, one of the pillars in my book is the idea that belief is transferable, that people don't know that they can do wonderful things. They need positive encouragement. And how do you do that effectively with people? How do you get them? Because they have to believe they can do it. And we have to encourage them and support them and give them the tools and resources along the way. And when we do that, you've got a heck of a team in front of you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then they want to work for you, with
That's
you,
right.
for you, because you inspire them and they admire you. And that's why you're such a leader, Brian, because when I mention your name in the home improvement industries with different people that even were on my podcast, they go, oh yeah, Brian, it's amazing. But they look at it in terms of, that's why when I started a podcast, when you came on, I said, yeah, I have this celebrity, but it's true, because it's not because of your ego, because you go, oh, I'm important. It's because you achieve those results and you are there to help people, and people are willing to follow.
Well, I think the moment we realize that leadership isn't about us, but it certainly begins with us, and our leadership can be measured based on how our teams perform, both in our presence and in our absence, right? So it's really not about us. It's about developing people, and in many ways, it's the responsibility, right? It's the responsibility and the privilege to grow and develop others. When you think about those two words, responsibility and privilege, responsibility, if you're a leader, and everybody is a leader, regardless what's on your business card, by the way, people are leaders because they have influence. The moment you have influence over others, there's a responsibility that goes along with that. I am responsible for being a great leader to people. That means I'm accountable. That means all those sort of things. On the other side, it's a privilege. And out of privilege comes gratitude. So yes, I have a responsibility, and I'm super grateful for that responsibility as well. And when you marry those two things together, I think that's when, look, you can get lost on social media with people that say you need to take an ice bath every day if you want to be a leader. I don't think that's necessary. In fact, I've never taken one.
I haven't tried that particular approach, but I don't think so.
Right. It's really about authenticity. It's like, are you doing it from a good place, and do you believe in people, and are you doing it for the right reasons, while at the same time also in leadership is being a gardener of your company's culture, because your culture is shaped by the lowest level of acceptable behavior. And in business, what we tolerate, we actually attract more of. So as an example, if you're having a Zoom meeting and you have, maybe it's at 8 o'clock in the morning and there are 20 people on the Zoom meeting and 3 of the cameras are off, and if you tolerate that, I promise you the next week, 5 cameras will be off, and before you know it, nobody will have their camera on. So in business, also part of leadership is understanding that we have a responsibility to the culture of the business, how people think, feel, and behave inside of the organization. And to do that, we have to make sure that we're trimming culture when necessary, and we're gardeners of the company's culture, because culture, ultimately, how people think, feel, and behave in your business, ultimately determine whether they're showing up on time, the kind of work they're doing when you're not looking, whether they're being safe and productive. And all of those things are what decide organizational performance. Culture and mindset drives organizational performance. So as a business leader, that's really where we need to start.
I agree. That's exactly right. So, I always say it's either, every problem, it's either people or process or both, right? And then that's why you have to know how to hire the right people and create the culture. That is utmost importance. And then if you have issues or things are not going exactly as you're expecting, etc., then you can look at the process, but you have to have the right people.
Yeah, and to that point, like when something does go wrong, let's just pretend for a moment that you are my production manager, and there's some problem with a job, right? And I come to you and I say, "What happened to Mrs. Jones' job?" You're going to be like, "Well, it wasn't me; it was that person's fault," right? You're going to be pointing your fingers in multiple directions. Part of leadership is also separating people from process. I'd be much better, more effective saying to you, "Hey, we have a problem on Mrs. Jones's job. Look, I know we have the right people on our team. Where do we think our process is broken that brought us to this?" It's really about addressing the process. It's the only way to truly get to the root cause. Because look, I don't think anybody wants to do a bad job. But often what happens is there's thing that's broken in the business that allows that to happen. If you can have people focus on the process, they then don't take it personally.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's exactly right. Because then you can actually pinpoint to the exact, it's not a person, it's the process, and let's work together.
Correct.
Then it also creates that group and working together. Absolutely. Brian, let's talk about your book. So show it to the
Sure.
camera. It's behind you.
Yeah, right there, Beyond the Hammer, right there. Yep.
Exactly. So what inspired you to write Beyond the Hammer?
Well, look, I believe that the two most important days of your life are the day that you're born and the day you finally figure out why, right? And I believe that my purpose, where I am the most fulfilled, is when I make a positive impact in this world through the entrepreneur and the managers of organizations, because they affect so many other people, and people that work for companies. It's not this work-life balance where people bring their work home with them, whether you want them to or not. And if I can make an impact at that level, by building a great business and doing well and also doing good. If you think the purpose of business is really to make a decent profit decently, and how do you be a decent leader? And that's a story I wanted to tell. So when I first started writing the book, first of all, I thought it would take a few months. It took 2 years. Okay, so it took 2 years to write it.
I feel good about that, because I thought I will write a book in a few months, and I'm still in the process. And by the end of the year is the target to get it out. But yes, so definitely, yeah.
Part of what took a while, and I know a lot of people in this industry have read it, is that I didn't want it to be just another leadership book. I wanted it to be engaging, relevant, actionable, and super and comical at times and serious at times. So I wrote it as a parable, where the first half is a business parable and the second half is more about strategy. Writing a business parable with characters and character arcs and all these conversations, it was a real challenge, but it was such a good time. And I'm so humbled by, I just got a photo today. Somebody sent me a picture, this organization, Mosby Builders, of they're all holding up Beyond the Hammer because they are doing a leadership study on the book. There's so many organizations doing these studies, and so the amount of books I've sold is humbling. In fact, I'm actually going to London in September. I'm a finalist in an international book award, so that's pretty fun. It's been a wild ride. It's been a very humbling experience. It's been great.
Brian, it's amazing. It seems like everything you touch, you turn it into gold, which is incredible. But one of the things that I also know about you is that it is beyond the hammer. It's not just, because it's not just, it's like, like right now, we went through home remodel, right? So the people that helped us really created that beautiful environment for us. So you're actually helping when you're going into people's homes. Yes, you are doing it, so you can have a profit, as you said, etc. But what you're really, the consequence is that if you do it right, then you are creating a beautiful home for somebody to come home and enjoy it and have a great quality of life. So if you think about it in a broader sense, you do that. But I noticed about you as well, and what I heard from others and by our conversations and hearing you also in conferences, you also do good for the community. You don't just think about yourself, but you have that whole concept. How can I help others? Others that might not be able to pay me for my home services, others that might not be able to pay me for a new bath, but they need it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your philanthropy or your giving back to the community?
Yeah, well, that was near and dear to my heart and near and dear to the culture of the business, right? If our mission statement was to do well and do good. And how do we do both of those things? And to not just me writing a check to some nonprofit and sending it in, it goes off into some river and I never see the results of it. We made a decision that if we can make a positive impact in the life of just one individual at a time, that's how we take part in changing the world. So what we did is we always seeked out ways to do that. And it was part of what we did, and it got everybody involved in it. And one program is, I think you probably spoke to Senya about our Bass for the Brave program, where
Yeah,
we,
and we talk about, I mean, Senya, absolutely big shout out to her. We are going to include the
yep,
podcast I did with her there because we went into it and into the program. And she actually, that's how I met Senya because I won on a webinar. And that's again a shout out to Brianna Heatherton about from altruistic
yep,
coaching. She's amazing. And she introduced me
sure,
to Senya. But Senya was on that webinar and she explained the entire thing, and it just almost brought me to tears.
yeah.
And it was very touching, the care, the change in people's lives. You know, this is what
Well,
it is. It's like what impact you are actually creating on the other side, so people are living better lives.
without a doubt, the bath business is a great business, but it's also a sad business at times because you go into these homes and you have these veterans that have served our country proudly, but because of financial issues and mobility challenges, they have a bathtub they can't step over, and they're petrified to take a shower in their own home. And we just thought that was unacceptable. So that's how Baths for the Brave was born. But what's interesting is that now, last year, so far, we've been in 38 states across the country doing free showers for veterans across the country, over several $1 million in showers. I'll tell you another one about our window business. I don't know if you're aware of it, but in fact, I'm going to grab something off the wall here. Give me
Yes,
1 second.
please,
I'll be right
absolutely.
back. Hold on. I'm right here
Okay.
still. So in the window business, what happens here in the window business, you put new windows in people's homes all the time, and you typically take the old windows out and you throw them in the trash. And we thought, you know what? That is such a shame. How can we do well and do good with these old windows? So instead of throwing them away, we started working with local artists, community members, business owners, the Green Bay Packers, all the different, and we would give these old sashes to people and ask them to turn them into beautiful art pieces like this one right here. This is an old window that was turned into a really cool art piece, right?
Beautiful.
Okay. And then
Wow.
so we would take all these art pieces and then we would display them at a community center in our town, and we would auction them all off. And all the money raised would go to help somebody in our community. And it's called Windows for a Cause, and it still goes on today. And it's just really cool. In fact, we actually have a Guinness World Record for the most painted windows displayed. It was really kind of fun. But but the whole community is involved in it. It's not just me, the installers that are putting the windows in are involved. Everybody's involved in the program. And I think that's what's so fun is cause marketing, when you can really drive it deep into your organization. It gives people more than just a paycheck. It gives them purpose and meaning in what they do. And gosh, isn't that what it's really all about? I mean, come on.
It is, absolutely. And I can see that that's your drive. I almost want to, I'm tempted to ask you, Brian, do you ever have days where you, in your business, when you thought you were never going to make it or things are going to be bad or anything like that? Did you ever experience any of that?
Yeah, well, sure, I have, of course.
And how do you
And
get yourself out of that? What do you do?
yeah, well, it's actually, when I was writing the book, I touched on that because one of the pillars in the book is that leaders are aware of the echo of their voice. And what happens is when you have influence over others and when you're running a business or if you're a manager, your team is going to decide what kind of day they're having based on the type of day that you're having. Okay. So if I come in stressed out, my whole team is going to be stressed out. So yes, I've had bad days, but you know what? A leader doesn't get to have bad days in front of their team. I could call my friends and dump on them. If you're a CEO of a company watching this and you're having a bad day, call me. I'll take your call anytime. You can dump on me all day long. We can't dump on our team, but
Yeah.
also I think we also have to say the counterbalance to when you're stressed out, nothing gets solved in the problem. It only gets solved in the opportunity. So how do we get our team and ourselves off of the problem and into the opportunity as quickly as possible? Because it's in the opportunity when we can be grateful, when we can do all those sort of things, when we bring out the best in people. And look, some of our greatest processes and greatest triumphs came out of, sheer failure at first. And I mean, I remember the first time I tried replicating my company in a new market. Boy, we fell flat on our face. I mean, we picked the wrong market with the wrong product at the wrong time, the wrong way. And we learned so much from that that we said, okay, now we have another list of what to never do again. But from that grew the ability to really be good at opening up other markets with other products and really be focused. And so, sometimes the problem that we're experiencing is a blessing in disguise. Okay.
I think so too. And it's the attitude, and it's you show it, it's your attitude, it's your outlook on life. It's like looking at the opportunity. You're right. I mean, why wallow in the problem? What is that? Where is that going to take you or get you?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
just like, okay, fine, and we all had that. I mean, we had like that feeling that the rug is being pulled out under our feet, like, during 2008 maybe, or during the pandemic, or whatever anybody has experienced. But okay, so you take it, you look at it, and you go, okay, so what's next? What am I doing? Where am I going? How to do it, and then take it and do it.
That's right. That's right. It's such an opportunity because look, and again, going back to when we first started our conversation, it's not like we went into these businesses with a great business plan. So we're not going to get everything right all the time. Okay. We just got to know that. But it's worse if we don't take any risk. If we don't take risk, we're frozen in indecision, and that's, by the way, through the entire organization. Look, typically the CEO is a great decision maker, right? But what happens is as the business grows and you have more and more people on your team, now the CEO is actually further and further away from the people that are serving the customer. And now, guess what? They might not be the best decision maker anymore. Sometimes the CEO isn't the best decision maker on things that relate directly to the customer because we're in an ivory tower. This is why empowerment and giving your team closer to the customer, not just a voice, but a megaphone inside of your business, inviting feedback. Tell us where we get it right. Tell us where we got it wrong. If I may, I'll share something with you.
Absolutely.
And I wrote about this in my book. That I remember when people used to quit, our HR department used to do something called an exit survey, right? We do an exit interview. And we would mine all this stuff as to why this person is leaving. It's like, how come we didn't know this sooner? How do we do this proactively? So we started doing what's called a stay interview while people are working there. Because you see, what happens is I'm a CEO of a business. I think my culture is one way. I don't know until I ask the team. So a stay interview is 4 questions. The first question is, what makes you want to come to work every day? The second question is, what would make you one day want to leave? The third question is, what is one thing the company is doing wrong today? And the fourth thing is, what is something that you're not getting from your manager that you really need? By doing a stay interview, that tells me how the culture is in my organization. It's so important. And it gives people a voice, and people really appreciate that. Again, do they want a paycheck? Of course. But ultimately, I think most people want to be valued and appreciated, not just at home, but also in the workplace.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And I agree with you on that. That's what people want. And it's definitely needed and important. Absolutely. Brian, what a great conversation. We touched on so many topics, but I think it's the gist of your attitude and how you look at things and your outlook and your determination and your drive that really got you to where you're at, and the willingness to help and wanting to create a real difference. So if people want to hear, get a hold of you. You offered the opportunity to cry on your shoulder, but maybe it's more reading your book or reaching out to you and finding out more. If somebody has questions, how can they do that?
Yeah, they can go to my website, briangottlieb.com. And of course, if you want to get the book, it's available both in audio and in print. The audio version is fantastic, by the way. It's fantastic. Trust me on that. And anyway, that's on Amazon and it was it's in Hudson airports right now across the country, which is kind of fun too. So yeah, get my book, go to my website, whatever, reach out to me. Happy to have a conversation with you.
And I highly recommend reading the book, listening to it on Audible. So Brian, thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, and thank you too for the real difference you make in companies. You really allow a CEO to sleep good at night because they don't have to worry about a lot of these details because they're written down, they're documented, it's a process, they're trainable. What you do is impactful. So thanks for everything you do.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.